Number 3. This is not a ghost story. At least I don't think it is. But it is an account of my first brush with the paranormal. I am a firm believer in the paranormal, and I always have been. And one day my belief was fortified. That day was when I saw what I believed to be a hellhound. This occurrence took place 3 days after my 25th birthday, about the middle of summer. It was a brisk night in my hometown of American Canyon. While walking home from the local market, I hear this deafening howl. Then, I catch a glimpse of what I thought was a large dog. I assumed it was just one of the many strays in my neighborhood. But as I continued, I saw the same large dog. This time, I got a better look at it. I was unnerved because of the dog's size and appearance. It was about the size of a small bear. The build of the dog was like that of a Rottweiler, while the fur was the darkest black I'd ever seen, like it was made of pure shadows, with piercing, glowing red eyes that seemed to peer into my soul. The dog's torso was tangled in what looked like barbed wire. After I saw it, the dog then darted away with incredible speed. At this point, I was quite scared. I continued on my way home and found myself dreading each corner, fearing another sighting of this hellish creature. I had almost made it home when the beast appeared again. This time, it stood directly in my path. I was frozen with fear, hair standing up on end, and I closed my eyes, fearing an attack. It starts to growl, a deep, rumbling growl. One that I felt deep in my soul, and one that threatened to turn my legs to jello. I don't know what compelled me to do so, but I started praying to the Lord and Jesus Christ in heaven to make this beast leave. But the growling intensified. It seemed as if the growl just pulsated through my mind, doing everything in its power to get me to stop praying. But I continued to pray. I just prayed and prayed and prayed. As I continued to pray, the growl slowly dissipated. When I finally opened my eyes, all that was left were scorch marks where the dog stood. I was terrified and shaking as I rushed home and locked the door. But when I turned around, I'm greeted by a pitch black dog. But this one, I'm sure, means me no harm. It's my black Labrador, Mia. After that night I just wanted nothing more than to relax and think about what happened. So I turned on the TV for some background noise, and when it starts up, I see a show on Animal Planet called Lost Tapes. The episode was about hellhounds, and what they were describing sounded eerily similar to what I encountered. To this day, I have yet to see the same dog, or another like it. So this begs the question, what did I see? A hellhound? A spectral creature? Some sort of demon? I never will know. But then again, I'm not sure I want to. Number 2. This story is of my childhood imaginary friend. I know, at this point you're probably saying, what the heck? But just keep in mind, this is very real to me, and you should understand after I'm done with the story. Please, be patient with me. I normally don't tell people what I've seen or heard, for fear of being judged, or deemed crazy. With that being said, let me start. When I was a little girl, I used to have a friend that only I could see and interact with. He was a beautiful white wolf, whom I named Wolfers. Corny, I know, but I was only 4 when he appeared the first time. I was never afraid of him. He was my protector. When I would have bad dreams, he would wake me up and sleep on the foot of my bed. With him around, I always felt safe. We did everything together, and he followed me everywhere. My parents were very loving and understanding parents. They played along with me, even bought chew toys and all. One night, when I was around 9 years old, I was awakened in the middle of the night to growling and snarling. I sat up and saw wolfers fighting with what looked to be a big black wolf. It was twice as big as wolfers. I must have made a noise or something, because the black wolf turned and saw me, and then started towards me, but wolfers leapt at him and began to fight again. The two disappeared into the darkness of the room, and I never saw wolfers again. However, the black wolf I see every so often, and has followed me everywhere I move to. I can recall the first time I saw him after that night. I was 11, and I was outside playing tag with my friends in the dark of the woods behind my house. I heard a noise, and thinking it was one of my friends, I went over to where I heard the noise at. The big, black wolf jumped out at me, and I ran. After I got so far as my actual yard, it stopped and paced back and forth. The second came many years later, when I turned 18. My ex-boyfriend and I were moving into a house together. His parents owned it, so they didn't charge us much rent, just enough to cover the mortgage. I was home alone and was unpacking the kitchen when I heard a scratchy noise coming from the back door. I went to see what it was. Luckily, it had a big window in it, so I turned the light on and looked out the window. That's when I saw a big, black flash as soon as the light turned on. It ran into the yard, out of the light. I stepped outside and looked, but all I saw was a black, shadowed shape with yellow eyes staring at me. That's when I heard the growling. I turned and ran back inside and shut and locked the door. I didn't see it after that for a while. After a few more years, when I was about 23, I was living in North Carolina with my new fiance, my 2-year-old daughter from my previous relationship, and my niece and her boyfriend. My daughter was sleeping, and my other roommates were at work. I was in the office on my computer, chatting on AOL, when I heard a scratching noise at my back door. I thought maybe my dog got off his chain and was trying to come inside, so I went outside to check. He was inside his doghouse, and he looked scared. I talked to him, and he came out, and he was fine. I went back inside, and that was that. A few years later, we moved back to York, Pennsylvania. I moved back to the house that I had lived in with my ex. Yes, same owners. But since she is the grandmother of my children, she felt she had to help us. Well, we moved in and we were fine for the first couple of months until one night after my children, at this time I had 2 more, another girl and a boy, went to bed and my fiance was working 3rd shift and going to school. I was always home by myself at night. One night, I was upstairs and I heard a noise in the kitchen downstairs. I went to see if maybe one of my older kids had gotten up and was rooting into the fridge like they often do. But as I turned at the bottom of the stairs, I saw a black shadow run out the back door. I ran to the kitchen and the door was open. I grabbed the biggest and sharpest knife I could find and went outside, where I saw it as I had seen it years ago. There stood the figure with the yellow eyes. It looked like it had grown. I'm not sure of what this thing is, and I'm still terrified of it to this day. I have moved and been in my current home for 5 months, and I have seen this thing across the street and staring at me from afar. Oh, I just remembered another encounter. It was when I was pregnant with my 3rd child. It was in the road in front of my sister's house. One night, it was a full moon, and he just kept pacing back and forth along the yard line. Every time he tried to enter the yard, he stopped, like he was hitting a shield around the house. He couldn't come into the yard. Later, I found out from my sister that when I was in the hospital giving birth to my daughter, she had seen him in the driveway, which was only 3 feet from the front door. He stood there, staring at the house. My sister went outside to chase off the animal, but when she turned the handle to the door and opened it, he had disappeared. That was the first and only time she had seen him. If she did see him after that, she did not say. Well, that's my story. And does anyone know what this wolf creature is? If anyone could give me any insight on what it is, please let me know. Thank you in advance for your help, and thank you for your time. I'm sorry if the story isn't fascinating to you, but this is what happened to me. Number 1. For the past 3 months, I've been seeing this dog-like thing at the bottom of my stairs. Its back is arched, like a cat's, but twisted somewhat. It has a long, rat-like tail. It has black, tufted, ragged fur. Its legs are skinny, like a wooden walking cane. I haven't gotten a good look at its feet, but it appears to be just its paw bones. It has a skinny, dog face, and its ears are really pointy with tufts on top. It has a long tongue, about the length of your arm to your elbow. And this thing is huge. No normal dog can be this size. And lastly, it has glowing yellow eyes. I've been seeing it for most of my life, showing up at random times. Sometimes I would see it for a second, and then it's gone. Nothing big or too spooky. Until recently. It didn't show up for a few years, but now it's back. I walked out of my room 3 months ago to go to the bathroom. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw something at the bottom of my stairs. I turned my head and saw this thing. It was staring at me. It didn't do anything for the next week. I would see it after 9 o'clock at night when I left my room to go to the bathroom. And each time, it would stare at me. It was creepy, but manageable at first. The next week, it moved. It started walking up my stairs, its gaze never looking away from me. It walked strangely, its body twisting in painful-looking ways. I bolted back into my room. I closed my door and ran across my room to grab a knife. I stared at my door all night. Chills ran up my spine, and I felt like I was going to vomit from fear alone. Then, this wave of hate slammed into my head. And then I realized this thing was on the other side of the door, waiting. This continued for a week, the feeling of hate coming from this creature getting stronger and stronger each night that I dared to go outside my room. Another week goes by, and I made the mistake of exiting my room. It walked up the stairs and sat at the other side of my door again. But this time, something different happened. I was trying to get a grip on myself when something slammed against the door. I jumped in front of my door and held it against the slamming. It felt and sounded like claws scratching on the door, and the banging and slamming didn't stop until hours later. I'm at my wit's end. This thing keeps getting more violent. My door hinges have had to be fixed and replaced twice, and I've had to paint my door over and over. What scares me the most is this thing keeps following me. I lived all over California, and each time I move somewhere new, I see this creature sometime during the time I've lived there. I have seen it more than 3 times, but I'm not dead. It looks like a hellhound, but I'm not really sure what one would look like. So I'm guessing, and assuming from what a few close friends have told me. I really need help on how to get this creature to leave me alone or get what it wants from me. What should I do? What is this thing? What does it want? And why is it following me? All I know on how to calm myself down during the visits from the creature is a barrier spell a friend taught me. I'm not sure what kind of spell it is. It worked for 2 months, but I feel like this creature is slowly breaking the spell. Any help and knowledge will be valued greatly.